Good morning, Like You Follow Christian Church. It's October the 17th. It is absolutely gorgeous today, and I want to open with what I believe is answer to prayer. And you know, when you're a Christian and you ask for things, and then you stand back and you look, and those things have been given to you, you are so incredibly grateful. You know, when we first talked about doing dinner on the grounds about 2 weeks ago, well, as far as we could tell from the forecast, it was going to be rainy all through this weekend. And one of our prayers that the prayer group started praying was for beautiful weather. Well, look outside. It couldn't be any more gorgeous, any more crisp, like fall weather. And I choose to believe that it's not a coincidence, that it's an answer to prayer and God's blessings on all of us. So, with that said, let's talk about some people that need prayers today, because prayer changes things. Prayer is incredibly important, and I do believe that prayer makes a difference. Okay, Matthew, that's part of the lesson. Let me talk about people who need prayer. First of all, Chris, Ramona, Lisa. Wanda called yesterday, and she visited with Jeremy, I believe, and she said that JD had fallen and that he hit his head, and they took him to the hospital. And I tried to call Wanda back last night, but it was probably a little before 8 o'clock, and it was probably too late, and so I didn't get her. But I really look forward to hearing an update on what happened with JD, and I'm just so sorry. Please pray for them. And then on Bill Chafin, Bill always goes on this fantastic hunting trip at this time of year. And Bill has fallen, and he's hurt himself. And, he's able to get around. He doesn't think he's broken anything, but he's incredibly sore. And he's canceled his hunting trip. So we know that Bill has to feel really bad. Please pray for Bill. And just pray for the growth of the church. The youth had a lock-in on Friday night. They had 33 kids that stayed all night long. And our youth directors just talked about what awesome kids they were and what an incredible time they had, and how so many of them had special prayers that they shared, and that was probably what they thought was the best part of the lock-in. It was a wonderful thing. Our grandson Bo told me that they're already asking for another one, but he said it'll be a while. And I used to sponsor young kids. I get it. It'll be a while. Okay, this morning we're going to have a continuation of Matthew 24, and I'm just going to give you a little brief synopsis because I really hope you come up to church today. We're going to have our dinner on the ground in the tent that's going to be out on the grounds there. Dee and Steve McDonald have been wanting a dinner on the ground for a long time, and this is once again answer to prayer coming to fruition. Matt Rodebush found a tent that he got basically given to us, and we just had to take it down and bring it, and some of our young men did that. And so it's just really, we're really starting to see things move, and God has just been so good to us. So please come up and eat dinner with us. It's going to be fried chicken and jambalaya, and Steve McDonald, he hails from Mississippi as his home for many years before this became his new home, and he's fixing jambalaya, and he said he was going to start about 7:30 this morning, and it will be authentic. So please come up and come to church, and then come eat with us. So it'll be a great day. Also, I know I haven't had confirmation on this, but one of my students that I had in class back in like 1974 she is going to sing today in our service, and that was something we talked about over a month ago. So I just really hope that she gets to come. She doesn't live here, and so I'm really looking forward to hearing Gail sing today. So lots of good things going on at Like You Follow Christian Church. Just pray that you'll come up there. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you this now because I don't want to forget it at the end. But if you like Sunday school class and the things the updates that we give you, and the topics we talk about, please press the like button, and that will help the church. So we just appreciate you so much for tuning in. Okay, in Matthew 24, I started last week talking about when Jesus was talking about the destruction of Jerusalem. And then over when you get about into verse 27, you're going to find that he starts talking about things that sound more like end time. And so we talked about the eschatology and the study of end times a little bit. I'm going to go into that more today. I'm not going to go into it right now because that's a pretty deep subject, but I would love for you to come to class and hear the discussion if you would. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to read, we read verses 1 through 8 last week. I'm going to read verses 9 through 21 right now. And this is of Matthew 24. And then we'll probably be out of time, but I want to just make a few comments about it. Okay, in verse 9 it says, "Then you will be handed over to be persecuted and put to death, and you will be hated by all nations because of me." Now, remember that what we talked about last week in verse 8, up through verse 8, 1 through 8, is he was talking about Jerusalem. Remember that? And then prior to that, over at the end of chapter 23, that's when we're told in one of the Gospels that he was weeping over Jerusalem. And so now we're going to be talking about Jerusalem and some of the terrible things that are going to happen. And we know that the things that he's prophesying here, although they are apocalyptic things that he's talking about, we know that they're going to come to fruition in about AD 70 when Rome completely tears down the temple. Not one stone is left on another. And so we know it's going to happen. And this was absolutely the end of an age because if you'll note, you know, Jerusalem was torn up before. There have been many wars that have taken place around Jerusalem. The temple was completely torn down by Nebuchadnezzar. But, you know, here's the thing about this last one, this one where Rome comes in. This is where Jesus is talking about the end of an age. And this is where it'll never be God's house again. If you go to Jerusalem today, it's the temple is there, but it's no longer God's house. It's occupied by Muslims. So do you see that this is, Jesus is showing you this is coming to an end. And sometimes what we do is we read all this into being the end of time, when in fact it's a prophecy about Jerusalem. Now he does say some things when he gets on over in there, like starting with like verse 36 or over in that area, where he starts talking about things that we could perceive could be about the end of time. But remember that Jesus is also speaking apocalyptically in this chapter. So here we go. Verse 10, "At that time, many will turn away from the faith and will betray and hate each other." Think about this is the end of Christianity in Jerusalem as we know it, okay? And the Jews never recovered. The Jews never recovered. Now, I should say Judaism, not Christianity, because the Jews never recovered from that last attack on Jerusalem. "And the false prophets will appear and deceive many people." Verse 12, "Because of the increase of wickedness, the love of most will grow cold." 13, "But the one who stands firm to the end will be saved. And the gospel of the kingdom will be preached in the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come." So when you see standing in the holy place the abomination that causes desolation spoken of through the prophet Daniel, let the reader understand. Now, this is a whole different story in itself. And you need to go back and you need to read the prophecies of Daniel in the Old Testament, because he talks about this very same thing, the abomination of desolation. And what this reference, we believe this reference is talking about, is after the temple, when the temple was taken over and destroyed, that on that spot, on the altar, that and this had happened prior, this has been during the Maccabean period as well, that this happened, from another member of the of Rome, that this, when Titus is there, also he's going to do some things that are abomination to God and desecrate the holy temple. So this is what it's talking about here. "And then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains." Let no one on the housetop go back to take anything out of the house. Now remember, this is when Rome comes in, surrounds the city. Also, I want to point something out to you. If you're just questioning, no, she's got it wrong, then please go back and look at Luke 21, 20 and 21, because this is where Luke is talking about the same thing that Matthew is talking about here. And this is where Luke says, and where Matthew talks about the abomination and desecration. This is where Luke says it in plain language. Luke the doctor, he says it in plain language, and what he says is, when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies. Okay, do you get it now? This is when Rome comes in. And it says, so let those flee to the mountains. And he's talking about, the Jewish people, get out of town. Get out of town. When you see this happening, you better flee. And he says, don't go back down. Don't go from the housetop. Don't go back in your house and get anything. Just get out of town. And he says, let no one in the field go back in, get their cloak. I mean, just move. How dreadful it will be for those who are pregnant or their nursing mothers, because what they've got to do is just take their baby and go. And then pray that your flight will not take place in the winter or on the Sabbath. And then there will be a great distress, unequaled from the beginning of the world until now, and never to be equaled again. And that was what I was talking about when Jerusalem is completely destroyed, that the Jews never recovered from that. It's not ever been equaled, even though there's been wars and rumors of wars among the Jewish people since the beginning of time. There's never been anything that just completely tore their nation apart until Titus came in 70 AD and completely annihilated Jerusalem. Okay, so verses 22 through 28. In those days, if those days had not been cut short, no one would survive, but for the sake of the elect, those days will be shortened. At that time, if anyone says to you, look here, is the Messiah, or look, there he is, don't believe it. And he says, for false messiahs and false prophets will appear and perform great signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect. And the elect are those that are chosen, the chosen ones, the ones that have come to Christ. And he's saying, don't be deceived by the people who are going to come in and tell you things that aren't actually true. They're not actually going to happen. Listen to me. Listen to my words. That's what he's saying. See, I have told you ahead of time. So if anyone tells you, there he is out in the wilderness, don't go out there. Here he is in the inner rooms. Don't you believe it? In verse 27, it says, as lightning that comes from the east is visible even in the west, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. Wherever there is a carcass, there the vultures will gather. There's one thing I want to tell you that you may not have thought about before, but when Jerusalem was attacked by Titus and Rome, and they came in and completely annihilated the city, where does Rome come from? Where would the Roman soldiers be marching from to come into Jerusalem? They're coming from the east, and they're going to be coming in very quickly, and they're going to be killing thousands and thousands of the Jewish people. And that's why he's saying, get out of town when you see this happening. Okay, so immediately after the distress of those days, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, the stars will fall from the sky, the heavenly bodies will be shaken, and then will appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. And then all the peoples of the earth will mourn when they see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he will send his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather the elect from the four winds, from one end of the heavens to the other. Now learn this lesson from the fig tree. As soon as its twigs get tender and its leaves come out, you know that summer is near. Even so, when you see all these things happening, you know that it is near, right at the door. Truly, I tell you, this generation will certainly not pass away until all these things have happened. Now, there's a key right there. He says this generation will not pass away. Okay, this is about 40 AD, or this is about 30 AD. In 40 years, which will be 70 AD, during this generation, that's when it's going to happen. And he's talking about the destruction of Jerusalem. And then, in verse 35, 36, now he's going into what appears to be more like the end of time. Guys, I just want to remind you that when you read, if it doesn't sound right, if it doesn't fit, and someone's telling you something that doesn't fit with what you're reading in Scripture, please go back to Scripture. And also understand that when things are written in apocalyptic ways, those are things that are written to hide. Apocalyptic writings are hidden writings. And when we talk about things like the 1,000 years and the tribulation and when Christ supposedly comes back, like Tim LaHaye and tells us in his books, and his books are fiction, you understand that. And when he supposedly there's a plane flying and then there's a guy gone, and all the babies are gone from the nurseries, and all those things. I just want you to remember that's fictional, and that he sold a lot of books and he sold a lot of movies and he made a lot of money. But remember what Jesus says about false prophets. And be sure and read Scripture according to the way that Jesus told it. So I'm going to talk about that in class today. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through the New Testament and point out Scriptures that talk about end times. And guys, every one of them, save Revelation 20. Revelation 20 is apocalyptic. And all the other scriptures in the New Testament that talk about the end time talk about it being quick, in the flash of an eye, the blink of an eye, and that it's going to, when it comes, that Christ is going to come on the clouds, and that there's going to be a shout and a trumpet sound, and that all the dead will rise, and then those on earth that belong to him are going to come up to the clouds with him. Guys, it all happens in one day. It talks about it in Scripture in the New Testament. And then after death, then the judgment. And guys, so come to class. We'll go through it. We'll talk about it. Just want to read one more Scripture to you, and then I just want to tell you that I'm just so glad you joined me today. And here it is. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. Wow. And for all of us who are believers, that should be the most comforting thing of all. He's never going to leave us. No matter what terrible things we read or we talk about, these are kind of things that give children nightmares. We talk about the end of the world, the end of times, the destruction of cities. But guys, here's the deal. When you belong to him, then he belongs to you. And he's never going to pass away from you, and you're never going to pass away from him as long as you do the will of our Father who is in heaven. That's what he tells us. You can take great comfort in that. Have a great Sunday. Come out and eat lunch with us today, outside on the grounds, old-fashioned, in a tent, for crying out loud. It'll be phenomenal. Okay, love you guys. Have a great Sunday.